My name is Stanley Rowe. I'm 59 years old. Until recently, I was the operations manager at Harper Machinery, a company built from the ground up by Charles Harper, a man who, in many ways, became the father I never had. I didn't make waves, never shouted, never courted the spotlight. I just made sure the gears turned, that orders got filled, and that safety checks weren't skipped for the sake of a quarterly bonus. For nearly 2 decades, that was enough. Until she arrived. Vanessa Harper, 28, freshly minted business degree and an ego the size of her perfume cloud. She strolled into my life wearing heels sharper than her strategy and declared a new era of modernization. And just like that, I became obsolete. No warning, no conversation, just, we don't need old men like you dragging us down. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even flinch. I packed my desk, eyes down, ears burning in the silence of people I had mentored, now too scared to even meet my gaze. They watched me leave like I was a ghost. But what Vanessa didn't know, what she hadn't even bothered to check, was that her father had insisted on a clause in my employment contract. If I was terminated without cause, I was entitled to 2 full years' salary. No loopholes, no negotiations. She'd walked me out with the arrogance of someone who believed she had burned the past. What she had really done was sign her future away. At home, I made 2 calls. One to Harold Preston, a lawyer friend itching for a corporate fight. The other to myself, to sit quietly in my kitchen and face what had just happened. Linda, my wife of 29 years, was gone now, lost to cancer 4 years ago. The silence in the house wasn't just about the job. It was about everything. But I couldn't stay in that silence long. Because the next morning, my phone rang. Charles Harper. "What the hell happened yesterday?" he asked. "Ask your daughter." He was stunned, thought she'd consulted the contracts, thought she'd show restraint. But she hadn't. She fired me, Thomas from engineering, Jennifer from quality control, anyone over 50. To her, experience was excess weight. "I told her to keep the core team," Charles said, his voice cracking. I said nothing. What was there to say? "She said you were resistant to change." "Did she have documentation?" He sighed. "No." "She'll need it." That was the beginning. The moment when the idea of justice stopped being a cold comfort and started becoming a strategy. I spent that day calling every fired veteran. Most were shaken. All were angry. But more than that, they were worried. Not just about jobs, but about what would happen to a company being run by spreadsheets instead of sense. And I had an answer for them. One name, Douglas Clean, owner of Precision Parts, a man who had been asking me for years to jump ship and help him build something better. Something smaller, smarter, more human. "Still interested?" I asked him. "More than ever," he said. The plan began forming. Not revenge. Not yet. Just an idea of what could be built from the wreckage of arrogance. 3 days later, I sat across from Vanessa and her hotshot attorney, Harold by my side, and the contract highlighted like a Christmas tree. She called it ridiculous. Said it was just a change in direction. "Where's the documentation of cause?" Harold asked. There was none. Of course there wasn't. She thought she could muscle her way through. "Offer me 6 months severance. Take it or leave it." "We'll take it to court," Harold said. And that's when Charles walked in, thin, tired, still carrying the weight of a legacy that was being gutted. He took one look at his daughter and said, "Prepare the severance agreement as written." It was done. I'd won, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like loss, like watching a tree you planted get chopped down before it could bear fruit. Vanessa cornered me on the way out. "This isn't over. Any company that hires you will never do business with Harper again." She thought that was a threat. I knew it was a clue, because I already had a company. and I already had a plan. She just hadn't seen it coming yet. 3 days after Vanessa signed my severance check, I met Thomas Baldwin, our former head of engineering, at a quiet diner between our homes. He looked tired, angry, but more than anything, confused. "They gave me a year's severance," he said, stirring his coffee without drinking. "But it came with a 5-year NDA. Can't talk about our own work." "Are you signing it?" He nodded slowly. "Got a granddaughter starting college. Don't have much choice." I slid a business card across the table. "Douglas Clean, Precision Parts. He's looking for someone who knows hydraulics." Thomas frowned. "If I take this, Harper will sue." "Not if you're advising on general industry knowledge. Nothing proprietary." He stared at the card like it was a lifeline. "What's going on, Stanley? This isn't like you." He was right. I wasn't the type to stir pots. I was the type to keep them from boiling over. "I'm partnering with Douglas," I said quietly. "Starting a new division. Custom hydraulics, the stuff Vanessa thinks is a waste of time." His eyebrows lifted. "Charles always said that was the future." I nodded. "And she's selling the machinery for it, liquidating it at auction prices." Thomas's face went pale. "That's over $2 million in equipment, at 30 cents on the dollar?" "She's converting assets into cash," I said. "And guess where she's buying property?" "Miami." "Yep." We sat in silence, the truth sinking in. "She's not running the company. She's gutting it." And in that moment, I saw the change in Thomas. The engineer in him, always logical, clicked into focus. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was systemic. It was happening right under Charles's nose, and he didn't even know. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Build something better." That night, I called Jennifer, our former quality control lead. She was still at Harper, counting down the days to retirement. She couldn't afford to leave, but she could observe. "I need you to watch, quietly. Report what you see." She agreed, and just like that, the quiet rebellion began. Over the next 6 weeks, I built a team, slowly, methodically, like wiring a system that had to be fail-proof. First, Jason Wright, a CNC programmer. Vanessa had slashed his budget, doubled her own salary, and watched him quit. He was brilliant, criminally underpaid, and eager for purpose. Then, Rachel from procurement, Anthony from assembly, Maya from design. 7 in total, all top performers Vanessa had alienated. Harper Machinery was bleeding talent, and we were catching every drop. Douglas secured a warehouse on the east side of Indianapolis. Not flashy, but solid bones. We named it Cornerstone Precision. Thomas suggested the name. "Build from the corners up," he said. "That's how you make something that lasts." We worked quietly. No press releases. No job posts. Just connections, integrity, whisper networks of professionals who were tired of being treated like replaceable cogs. By the end of month 2, we had the first machines installed. Contracts signed with key suppliers, clients ready to place orders. And then came the photo. Jennifer sent it, an internal Harper memo. Production delays, missed deadlines, 3 major clients threatening to pull contracts. Douglas shook his head. "Brain drain's hitting them harder than I thought." I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. Because Harper still employed hundreds of good people. People I'd worked beside, trained, supported. Their failure wasn't the goal. But neither was silence. Then came the call. Charles Harper. "Stanley, we need to talk." I waited. "Vanessa's been selling assets, cutting corners. The board's worried." "Why are you telling me?" "Because you're the only one who knows every part of this business. The only one who can see a way forward." I hesitated. He'd given her control. He'd stepped aside, but now the house he'd built was collapsing under the weight of one arrogant decision. "There's a board meeting," he said. "Tonight, come to my house, 7. Bring Thomas if he's willing." I looked at the warehouse floor, at our team, our machines, our future. "I'll come," I said, "but I'm not promising anything." "Fair enough," Charles said, relief evident in his voice. "And Stanley?" "Yes? Thank you for still taking my calls." That night, in Charles Harper's home, we laid it all out. Numbers, failures, strategy, legacy. The board was there, every one of them. Vanessa wasn't, yet. They asked questions, real ones, not the shallow nods she'd grown used to. They wanted recovery, continuity, leadership, and they wanted me. But I had one condition. "If I come back," I said, "it won't be under the old name. Harper is a brand tied to chaos now. Cornerstone is the future." They hesitated, then agreed. Harper Machinery would merge with Cornerstone Precision. Vanessa would be bought out. Her leadership officially ended. The motion passed. Unanimous. 6 months after Vanessa fired me, I stood once again inside the main conference room at Harper Machinery. The room where I'd spent countless strategy meetings, performance reviews, and quarterly planning sessions. Today, it was packed. Vanessa sat at the head of the table, flanked by her young executive team, each of them barely old enough to rent a car. Her presentation was full of jargon. Market volatility, legacy inefficiencies, transformational pivots. A dozen slides in, and she had yet to say anything of substance. She spotted me near the back of the room. Her brow furrowed and her voice faltered for just a second. "What is he doing here?" she snapped. Charles sat beside the board chairman. The chairman stood, calm but firm. "Vanessa," he said, "the board has reached a decision regarding the company's leadership." Her face drained of color. "You can't be serious," she said. "You're going to let him back in after he—" The chairman gestured to me. "Mr. Rao will explain the new arrangement." I stepped forward, folder in hand. The same one Harold Preston had used 6 months earlier to prove my severance rights. But this time, the papers inside weren't about the end of my career. They were about a new beginning. "Harper Machinery is merging with Cornerstone Precision," I said clearly, making eye contact with every member of the board. "The acquisition agreement was approved this morning. We'll absorb the custom hydraulics division and continue operations under new leadership." Vanessa's laugh was sharp and brittle. "This is absurd. I'm the majority shareholder." Charles rose. His voice was low but unyielding. "You hold 20%, Vanessa. I kept 51, and I voted in favor of the merger." She looked like she'd been slapped. I slid the merger agreement across the table toward her. "Cornerstone will take over the parts of Harper still worth saving. The rest is up to you." Thomas entered from the hallway, flanking me with quiet dignity. "The engineering division will be under my direction," he added. Vanessa flipped through the documents with shaking hands. "This is business sabotage." "No," I said, my tone unwavering. "This is business correction." She opened her mouth, but there was nothing left to say. The room was already moving on without her. 1 year after the merger, I walked through the expanded facility that now bore both names: Cornerstone Precision and Harper Custom Hydraulics. Workers moved with purpose, the whirring of machines forming a rhythm that spoke of renewal, not decay. Charles stood beside me, leaning on his cane. His health had declined, but his spirit had returned. "Quarterly numbers are in," he said, handing me a folder. "Best in 5 years." I nodded, scanning the report. "Retentions stabilized. 3 new patents filed. Client satisfaction up 28%. He smiled. Vanessa called yesterday. I glanced at him. She's in Miami, starting a consulting firm. Asked if I'd invest. I didn't say a word, just watched his expression. I told her to come back first, learn the business from the ground up, like I did, like you did. He sighed. She hung up. But then? She called back this morning, asked if the offer still stood. Below us, Jason was training 2 new programmers. Jennifer was in her lab coat, inspecting components. Thomas was sketching a design by hand before transferring it to CAD. Experience and innovation, side by side. Not enemies. Allies. You know, Charles said, when I put that severance clause in your contract, I never imagined it would save the company. I smiled faintly. Neither did I. But it had, because sometimes the very thing they try to bury you with, experience, loyalty, integrity, is the foundation for something they could never build without you. And now we were building it right. 3 weeks after the merger became official, the first major client returned. Midwest Manufacturing, our largest former contract, had quietly reached out, having heard the changes at Harper Machinery. They'd been struggling under Vanessa's leadership, late deliveries, inconsistent quality, communication breakdowns. Now they wanted to meet. Douglas and I hosted them at the new Cornerstone facility. Not a fancy conference room, just a clean, open space above the factory floor. We believed in transparency, nothing to hide. Their team walked through rows of custom machines, all calibrated to perfection. They saw familiar faces: Thomas, Jason, Rachel. All the people who used to be the reason their supply chain ran like a Swiss watch. After a 2-hour tour and 20 minutes of conversation, they signed on the spot. A 3-year exclusive contract. It was our first real validation. Not just that we were surviving, but thriving. And it sent a message. The brain trust was back. And this time, we weren't going anywhere. But the ghosts of Harper Machinery still lingered. Jennifer, who remained at the old facility a bit longer to finish her term before retirement, continued sending updates. Her messages were somber. Morale was collapsing. Vanessa's temporary hires didn't understand the machines, the workflow, the relationships. What had once been a tight ship was now a listing vessel. 2 more longtime clients had walked away. Quality control errors had tripled, orders delayed, technicians burned out, and then came a bombshell. Vanessa had quietly sold off the last pieces of Charles's legacy. 3 custom lathes, the heart of Harper's prototyping department. Sold to a reseller in Miami for less than half their value. It wasn't just short-sightedness. It was a fire sale. "What's she doing?" Jennifer wrote in her email. "Trying to bankroll something else? Or just bleeding it dry before walking away?" I had no answer. But I had a theory, so I did what I do best. I documented every sale, every transfer, every sign of collapse, and I waited. 2 months later, the board at Harper, what was left of it, formally invited Charles and me to a closed-door session. We arrived to find an emergency meeting in progress. Vanessa hadn't shown up in over a week. Her office was cleared. Her phone disconnected. Rumors swirled that she was attempting to relocate operations to Florida under a new name, using Harper's remaining funds. "They're worried about embezzlement," Charles said quietly as we waited outside the boardroom. "They think she's shifting assets offshore." "She's not that clever," I replied. "But she's desperate." Inside, we were asked to present a formal proposal, something permanent. "Cornerstone's model is sustainable," I explained. "Custom work, precision parts, fewer but deeper client relationships. We don't chase volume, we chase value." They listened. This time, really listened. And by the end of the meeting, we were offered more than just a partnership. We were offered full control of what was left. A clean break. One company. One vision. Charles smiled as we left. She tried to erase you, Stanley. Instead, she built me. I found Thomas that evening on the shop floor, fine-tuning a hydraulic tester. How do you feel about one name? I asked him. You mean, no more Harper? He said. No more Harper. Then let's build it right this time. That night, I stared out my window at the maple tree Linda and I planted 26 years ago. It had been hit by lightning, twice, nearly died once, but we nursed it back, nurtured it, like I had this company, like I would this second chance. Not because of the money, not because of the title, but because the foundation still held strong, and it deserved to be built upon, not torn down. 6 months after the final merger and rebranding, I stood at the center of Cornerstone Precision's main production floor. What once was a quiet warehouse on the east side of Indianapolis now hummed with purpose. We had 27 full-time employees, 13 of whom were former Harper veterans. Some had taken risks, leaving steady paychecks to join our gamble. Others had waited until the collapse was undeniable. All of them now had a place where their skills were not only appreciated, but essential. We'd secured 4 major contracts, not because we were the cheapest, but because we were the most reliable. Custom hydraulic systems, small batch production with 0 defects, design collaborations no mass producer would touch. We didn't sell quantity, we sold precision. Cornerstone had become exactly what its name promised. But the win wasn't in the numbers. It was in the people. Jason, who used to drown under unrealistic demands, now led our digital modeling department. Rachel restructured our supplier network and shaved 8% off operating costs. Anthony, once ignored by Vanessa, now trained our apprentices, and he did it with pride in his eyes. And Thomas? He was my co-founder now. Not in title. In truth, he was my anchor. One morning, Charles stopped by. He didn't say much. His health had taken a downturn. But he watched the machines, touched the railings he used to walk past at Harper, and nodded in silence. In my office, he sat slowly and pulled from his coat pocket a folded photo. It was yellowing at the corners. The first Harper machine. A single lathe, housed in a garage 43 years ago. I always wanted it to be more than a business, he said. I wanted it to be a place people were proud to belong to. Vanessa? She thought the name was the legacy, but it was never about the name. I know. You've done something rare, Stanley. You took failure and made it foundation. He handed me the photo. Keep it, he said. It stayed on my desk from that day forward. I got a call from Jennifer 2 weeks later. She was retiring early, finally, but she had something to tell me. Vanessa's new company in Miami? She said. Yeah? Gone, shut down, lawsuits, defaulted contracts. She didn't just crash it. She burned everything around it. What about Charles? He knows, and he's made peace with it. Says she'll have to come back and earn everything from scratch if she wants another chance. I hung up the phone and felt nothing. Not triumph, not pity, just closure. The final door had closed behind her, but 100 others had opened in front of us. 1 year after the last Harper paycheck cleared my bank, we hosted our first Cornerstone open house. Clients, friends, even competitors showed up. Charles sat in the front row for the speech he insisted I give. I kept it short. This company wasn't born in a boardroom, I told them. It was built in late nights, in quiet loyalty, in the sweat of those who refused to let good work die. We didn't reinvent the industry. We remembered what mattered in it. The applause was real, not polite, not rehearsed. When I stepped down from the podium, I saw Andrea, Linda's sister, smiling in the crowd. She mouthed the words, "She'd be proud." I believed her. As I closed the office that night, I looked at the photo Charles had given me. One machine, one man, one shot. Now, dozens of machines, dozens of people, and still just one shot, each day, to build something meaningful. Vanessa thought legacy was a throne, a title. She never understood legacy as earned, not inherited. We earned ours. One bolt, one blueprint, one brave decision at a time, and we weren't finished. Not by a long shot.